On this Tuesday night, going after Greenland, the U.S. president again amps up his threats to annex the Danish territory.
The Europeans are in no position to actually fight a war over Greenland.
What it could mean for NATO and how Greenland and Denmark are responding. Venezuela's power struggle, the hopes the opposition leader can take the helm, and why Donald Trump has overlooked her. What lessons Canada can learn from events in Venezuela.
We're basically being told that the Americans will do whatever we can get away with, and who's going to stop us?
Plus, Houston, we have hot gas.
We couldn't believe that our detection was real.
The new discovery dazzling scientists and what it tells us about how galaxies were created.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. European leaders, along with Canada's Prime Minister, met in Paris today to try to make progress on peace for Ukraine. But overshadowing those talks are threats from the U.S. president to seize Greenland, which is an autonomous territory of Denmark, a NATO ally. The White House said today the issue is not going away and that using the U.S. military is always an option. Denmark's prime minister, who met with Prime Minister Mark Carney today, says she believes President Donald Trump is serious and that if he takes Greenland, it will spell the end of NATO. Carney said he stands with Denmark, but was careful not to criticize Trump.
From a NATO context, the way I would frame it is that the western flank of NATO, which would include Greenland, the Arctic, is, given the evolving threat environment, is an area that we as NATO, Canada obviously importantly, given our geography, need to invest more in.
European leaders made it clear today they believe Greenland belongs to its people. Jackson Proskow begins our coverage tonight.
We have the most powerful, most lethal, most sophisticated, and most fearsome. It's a fearsome military on planet Earth, and it's not even close.
Still savoring the successful U.S. military operation in Venezuela, the American president seems emboldened to go further.
I've been saying it for a long time. Nobody can take us. Nobody.
Donald Trump's next conquest may be Greenland. He has mused about conquering the Danish territory for years. After Venezuela, his language is increasingly direct and alarming.
We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security, and Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
On X, Trump's State Department boasted, "This is our hemisphere."
By what right does Denmark assert control over Greenland?
On CNN, Trump's deputy chief of staff suggested the U.S. could step in and take what it wants.
Greenland should be part of the United States. Nobody's going to fight the United States militarily over the future of Greenland.
The anxiety among allies is palpable.
The future of Greenland is a decision for Greenland and for Denmark exclusively.
Other NATO members, including the UK, France, and Germany, signed on to an equally sharp rebuke with the same message.
I tend to think of this Greenland issue as, another sign that that the Trump administration is willing to put the screws to its partners in Europe and say, well, this is going to be in American interests, not in everybody's interests.
If Greenland's 56,000 residents are worried, Greenland's prime minister said, we're not in a situation where we think that there might be a takeover of the country overnight. The Danish prime minister says Trump should be taken seriously in this delicate moment. They've both asked for an urgent meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, but have so far been unsuccessful. Despite those objections, the White House says Trump wants to acquire Greenland one way or another during his current term and is open to everything from purchasing the territory to using the military. One real possibility is a compact of free association, a deal that would give the U.S. military free run of the island in exchange for free trade with the United States. Donna?
Jackson Proskow in Washington, thanks. European leaders are taking President Trump's renewed talk of seizing Greenland seriously because the lesson of Venezuela is that the Trump administration acts where it believes it can gain control and where resistance is manageable. Here's why Greenland is a strategic asset. It's a self-governing Danish territory straddling key air and sea routes across the Arctic and North Atlantic, including the Northwest Passage along Canada's northern coast and the Northeast Passage, also known as the Northern Sea Route along Russia's Arctic shoreline, and as sea ice retreats, a future transpolar route across the central Arctic Ocean. Plus, the GIUK, Greenland, Iceland, and UK gap is a naval choke point, a critical gateway connecting the Arctic with the Atlantic Ocean, where Russian submarines are already increasingly active, and NATO is actively strengthening its anti-submarine warfare capabilities. Now, back to those talks in Paris about the future of Ukraine. Its allies agreed on a framework of security guarantees, including the UK and France establishing military hubs across Ukraine where troops could be deployed, including possibly from Canada, to deter any future Russian assaults. But all of that would only happen after a ceasefire deal is reached. Mackenzie Gray is traveling with Canada's Prime Minister.
35 countries showing their support for Ukraine at a crucial time, but this meeting leading to more than just talk. After 4 years of war, Ukraine, France, and the United Kingdom signing an agreement to send a multinational force to Ukraine once a ceasefire is agreed to, a core security guarantee Ukraine needs to end the war.
This is a vital part of our ironcast commitment to stand with Ukraine for the long term.
French President Emmanuel Macron believing the agreement means Ukraine won't be forced to surrender and means any peace deal won't be violated in the future. The Ukrainian delegation staying in Paris for additional talks, with President Volodymyr Zelensky saying he's counting on more security guarantees being signed soon, including potentially with Canada. Mark Carney saying it's possible Canada will put boots on the ground.
As part of a coalition, as part of a multilateral force coming behind and coming with the Americans, that means that our contribution has a much bigger effect.
The Americans also view the meeting favorably, signing a joint declaration that supports a multinational force in a U.S.-led ceasefire monitoring program. Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner a surprise addition to the closing press conference.
We think we're largely finished with security protocols, which are important so that the people of Ukraine know that when this ends, it ends forever.
This is a major step forward from the U.S. in an attempt to finalize a peace deal, but Donald Trump routinely changes his mind on support for Ukraine. Even if the Americans are on side, Russian President Vladimir Putin has shown no signs of moving off his maximalist position of wanting Ukraine to give up land that Russia has not captured.
We have to be frank. For all Russia's words, Putin is not showing that he's ready for peace.
And Mackenzie, the Prime Minister was asked today about former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, who is resigning as an MP to work as an economic advisor to Ukraine. What did he say?
I asked the Prime Minister about Freeland's departure, Donna, and he said in his judgment she should quit as an MP if she's going to be an advisor to the Ukrainian president. Both the Conservatives and NDP are calling on her to quit immediately. Freeland says it will happen in the coming weeks. And when she does quit, there will be other Liberal MPs who will be joining her.
There'll be a few by-elections coming up, and we'll run great candidates, and the people in those ridings will decide who they want to send to Parliament.
That is significant, Donna, because as it stands, the Liberals are one seat short of a majority government. Any vacancy would mean Carney would need additional opposition support to pass anything in the House of Commons before a by-election takes place, which could also bring the risk of the Liberals potentially losing a seat. Now, we don't know when these elections would take place and who else is quitting, but it has been rumored, Donna, that former cabinet ministers Bill Blair and Jonathan Wilkinson are set to quit to be appointed as ambassadors here in Europe.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Paris, thank you. The U.S. intends to run Venezuela for an unspecified period of time after seizing the country's leader, Nicolas Maduro, in a nighttime raid. Venezuela's main opposition leader is calling for free and fair elections. Maria Corina Machado, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize last year, has been an outspoken critic of Maduro and wants to return to her home country. But President Trump has sidelined her, choosing to back Maduro's vice president as interim leader. Jeff Semple reports from Colombia near the Venezuelan border.
The Venezuelan regime is reasserting its authority. Gunfire echoed through the streets of Caracas overnight. Unconfirmed reports claimed gunmen were attacking the palace, but Venezuelan authorities said it was police shooting down unauthorized drones. Human rights groups say the streets are now crawling with security forces and new checkpoints, bracing for attacks from armed rebel groups. But the greatest threat to the Venezuelan regime, besides the U.S., may be this woman. Venezuela's pro-democracy opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, whose party won the last election in 2024 by a landslide, according to international observers. But Nicolas Maduro refused to concede.
I mean, January 3rd will go down in history as the day justice defeated a tyranny. It's a milestone.
In her first interview since Maduro's removal, Machado, who fled the country and is thought to be living in Europe, says she's making plans.
I'm planning to go back to Venezuela as soon as possible.
That's music to the ears of many Venezuelans, including this couple whom we met on the Colombian side of the border. I think she's our Iron Lady, Juan Antonio told us. This is the change that we've been waiting for a long time. And that lady, what she said and what she's done and what she has left to do, gives hope to Venezuela.
She has the trust of the people. Every time that Maria Corina Machado go out to the street, she can unite all the family of Venezuela.
Machado, who won the Nobel Peace Prize last year, says she hasn't spoken to President Trump in several months, but thanked him and said she planned to give him her Nobel Prize. But when Trump was asked about Machado on Saturday, his answer surprised many.
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country.
A report in the Washington Post, citing anonymous government sources, says Trump was angry with Machado after she accepted the coveted Nobel Prize in October. Trump announced his government was temporarily working instead with Maduro's former vice president and now acting Venezuelan president Delcy Rodriguez. Trump again threatened harsh consequences if she refused to follow his demands, and he also ruled out Venezuela holding an election soon. No, it's going to take a period of time. We have to nurse the country back to health, he said. In an exclusive interview over Zoom, Machado's national coordinator told Global News he's confident an election is coming. It's the goal of both Venezuelans and the Trump administration to hold free and fair elections because that would provide stability and security for the entire hemisphere, he says.
And what was your reaction to hearing President Trump say he doesn't think Machado has enough support?
I'm not in a position to interpret or question President Trump, but I'm hopeful that he will help our country, he said.
I think it's clear now that the main goal for the Trump administration is oil, not democracy or the restoration of decent living for the Venezuelan people. And I think that will cause us enormous grief in the near future.
This former Pentagon advisor says Venezuelans are in desperate need of aid. We saw large crowds of Venezuelans crossing the border to Colombia to shop for basic supplies. Recent estimates say the country's inflation rate is around or above 200%. I'm afraid, this Venezuelan told us, because I don't know what's going to happen next.
The vast majority of Venezuelans whom we approached here today did not want to speak on camera for fear of reprisal, thanks in part to a new national security law just passed by the Venezuelan government that criminalizes anyone who supports or promotes the U.S. strike that removed Maduro. Donna?
Jeff Semple in Colombia near the border with Venezuela. Thanks, Jeff. The uncertainty in Venezuela has given new energy to those who want to build a new oil pipeline from Alberta to BC's north coast. Venezuela has the world's biggest oil reserves, and the Trump administration has vowed U.S. oil companies will go in and get that oil flowing, possibly with the help of U.S. government subsidies. But that would be risky and hugely expensive. Canadian oil is a much safer bet, though, as Heather Urix West explains, the roadblocks that existed before are still there.
We'll be visiting New Delhi.
Looking for new lumber export markets, BC's premier is off to India to talk trade. But when asked about diversifying oil exports, a West Coast pipeline, according to David Eby, doesn't have to be the only way.
If we're going to do public investment into our resources here in Canada, I think it might be time to pivot that discussion to a refinery. We still buy oil products from the United States.
But fears that Venezuela, home to the world's largest deposit of heavy crude, could soon be in a position to increase production have some Canadians on edge. In a letter to the Prime Minister Tuesday, opposition leader Pierre Poilievre said Maduro's removal could eventually displace some of Canada's oil exports to our biggest customer. Accordingly, he says he's calling on the government to approve a new Pacific pipeline within 60 days of receiving Alberta's proposal.
A pipeline and exports to Asia. We've got competitive product. And we'd be diversifying our markets, and that's one of the reasons why we signed the comprehensive MOU with Alberta. So we'll be working towards that.
Signed at the end of November, Ottawa's Memorandum of Understanding with Alberta gives the province until July to submit a proposal for a new pipeline to BC's north coast. But it also makes clear that in order to be approved, the infrastructure would have to be privately built.
For people who do produce oil, they know that nothing's going to come quickly or easily out of Venezuela. This adds urgency that I think we need political support across the spectrum to diversify our exports. I don't think anyone can be left sitting on the fence about whether we need this Northwest Pipeline anymore, but it still will take time.
Time that will need to include consultation with Indigenous communities, most of which remain adamantly opposed, though ultimately the federal government has the final say. Heather Yurex, West Global News, Calgary.
Anti-government protests in Iran have now spread to Tehran's Grand Bazaar, the economic and political heart of that country. Shopkeepers closed their stores to join demonstrators. They're angry over the failing economy and the rising cost of living. Security forces used tear gas to try to control the crowds. At least 36 people have been killed in 10 days of demonstrations. That's according to human rights groups. The investigation into Switzerland's New Year's Eve tragedy coming up. How long it's been since that bar had safety inspections. Swiss authorities say a basement bar that caught fire on New Year's Eve had not had a safety inspection for more than 5 years.
Nous le regrettons amèrement.
The mayor, who expressed deep regret, says investigators will determine who is responsible for the blaze that killed 40 people and injured over 100. Local fire regulations mandate yearly inspections. It's believed sparklers attached to champagne bottles were held too close to the ceiling, igniting the fire. Most of the victims were teens and young adults. Hundreds of skiers have paid tribute to those who were killed. They gathered on a nearby slope, forming a giant heart. The event was organized by local ski clubs. Ahead, a stark warning for Canada after the events in Venezuela. Canada's former ambassador to the UN is warning that U.S. actions in Venezuela and its threats against Greenland are signs of its intention to dominate the Western Hemisphere. Bob Rae says Canada should not assume it is immune. Eric Sorensen looks at the threats and the reaction.
Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state.
He hasn't said it lately, but is it just a matter of time? Threatening to run Venezuela and to take over Greenland conforms with Washington's new national security strategy to restore American preeminence in the Western Hemisphere and to protect our homeland and our access to key geographies throughout the region. By definition, that includes Canada.
This is a declaration of unilateralism such as we have never seen.
Bob Rae, Canada's former UN ambassador, is now speaking bluntly about what he sees as an existential threat from a U.S. government now posting, "This is our hemisphere."
We're basically being told that the Americans will do whatever we can get away with, and who's going to stop us?
In just the last few days, the United States has asserted its preeminence in the hemisphere from South America to the high Arctic. Canada is positioned geopolitically, not just next door, but between the U.S. and Russia, as well as China's presence in the high Arctic. America's strategic interest in Canada and what this country has to offer is inescapable.
We're going to be under Washington's thumb, whether we like it or not.
International affairs expert Fen Hampson sees Canadian resources, oil, minerals, infrastructure being subjected to America's security interests.
It kind of looks like we're on the road to being downgraded from a sovereign neighbor to a U.S. Junior resource appendage.
Respectfully, Canada's Prime Minister is managing his relationship with President Trump cautiously.
I think Prime Minister Carney has handled it quite well so far.
Former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole now specializes in global investment risk.
Canada's best position is where we're a strategic partner that can influence the U.S.
But others say Canada and Canadians must understand what's now unfolding.
Not just a commercial discussion with a trading partner. It's about our future as Canadians. It's about our existence as a country.
And Canada will need to work with other allies.
It's going to be important to hang together, otherwise we hang separately.
Hampson suggests Mark Carney must walk a tightrope to secure trade with the U.S. while standing up for international boundaries and the rule of law. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Next, the unexpected discovery that could change our understanding of how galaxies form. Canadian scientists have made an exciting discovery that could change our understanding of the early days of the universe. It has to do with a group of galaxies. Heidi Petracek explains what researchers have found and how it's defying theories about the far reaches of space.
Using this sophisticated array of telescopes in the Chilean Andes, Canadian researchers have made an unexpected discovery in a cluster of galaxies far, far away a long, long time ago.
In a place with a distance of more than 12 billion light years.
A grouping of galaxies in the very early universe.
There, they detected something they didn't expect. Hot gas, hotter than the sun, and lots of it. Gas no one thought would exist in what are considered young galaxies.
When we first see such a signal, we couldn't believe that our detection was real.
And it tells us an awful lot about what's going on in the very early phases of forming this cluster of galaxies. The gas is the fuel for everything in the cluster. It builds the galaxies, it forms the stars.
The discovery has wowed others in the field.
There's probably about 5 times more energy than you would normally think, and a factor of 5 is pretty difficult to account for.
Prompting the question, where did all that heat come from 1.4 billion years after the Big Bang? The answer may lie in 3 supermassive black holes.
And these black holes, these active galaxies are shooting out jets and heating up the gas, we think.
Now you may be thinking, aren't black holes empty, sucking voids like in Star Trek?
We're being pulled toward the singularity.
In reality, black holes don't suck things in, but expel energy out. Hotter and earlier, it seems, than originally thought.
That's a pretty big shift in our current picture of cluster evolution, in my opinion.
Their next step continues scouring far-off galaxies to find the same conditions in other systems.
And see what it tells us about a much earlier phase of cluster evolution than anyone ever thought was possible to study.
Peering back billions of light years to understand just how the universe came to be. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Air Canada is Sherwood Park, Alberta. Thanks for watching and hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.